All right, welcome everyone for this month's webinar from the BD School. So this month we're going to talk about persuasion tactics in business development for business development professionals. I sometimes we tend to overlook a little bit the soft skills, but we really have to keep in mind that when it comes to business development, soft skills can really make or break our job and our success. Why? Because we're dealing always with people. Now, business development is pretty much a relationship-based job. So we really need to be able to leverage our communication skills, our soft skills, so that we're better able to interact, communicate with other people, and get them to do what we want. Now, for those of you who don't know me yet, I'm Lucia. I'm the founder of the BD School, which stands for the Business Development School. I'm Italian, as my name might suggest. However, I live in the Netherlands now in Rotterdam for 10 years, actually. I moved here for an internship about 10 years ago. And then after working for a few companies in business development, I decided to start my own company, the BD School, in 2019. What is the BD School? The BD School is the leading personalized learning platform entirely dedicated to business development. And what we want to achieve with the BD School is to create the next generation of business development professionals using the power of knowledge. And knowledge around business development is exactly all what we do. We provide content, just like this webinar, so free content, accessible to everyone. So every business developer in the world can learn how to do their job more efficiently through our blog, through our videos, webinars, and so on. We also provide courses, and we do individual and group courses and company courses as well. And then the last one is one-on-one coaching. So if you don't want to have a full course and you don't like just to learn on your own with free content, you can also just get 1 or 2 sessions, solve your challenges, and you're good to go in your job. That is it for us for the BD School. Of course, don't forget to visit our website, thebdschool.com, to find all the free resources I mentioned and to check our courses in case you want to take your career to the next level. Now, let's go to the topic of today, which is, of course, persuasion. So we're going to talk about persuasion tactics for BD. We're going to first give a little bit of an introduction into what is persuasion in the first place. Then we're going to talk about 5 persuasion tactics with some examples and practical tips. And then, of course, I'm going to give you also some reading tips, and we finish with Q&A. Now, as you can see, you're all muted for now. At the end, you will all be able to unmute yourselves. The meeting is also recorded, so in case you arrive later or you have colleagues that couldn't attend, but you want to share it with them, you will be able to share the recording afterwards with them. All right, now let's start with persuasion. What is really persuasion? Now, the simple term is really just one of the many communication skills that we have at our disposal. But more in depth and in a more detailed way, we can consider persuasion as the art and the science of influencing other people's thoughts, beliefs, attitude, and so on, using effective communication, compelling arguments, and the strategic presentation of information. Now, why persuasion is so important for business development pros? Well, the first, obviously, is that it helps us influence decision makers. Now, decision makers, both external and internal, right? Now, if you're a business development pro, you probably have been many times in the situation of proposing new ideas, new suggestions to your manager, or if you're a manager, to your boss, to the founder, and so on. And sometimes they tell, yeah, no, we cannot do that. This idea is too difficult to implement right now. We don't have the resources, and so on and so forth, which can be a little bit of a frustrating instance, right, for us in business development. Now, most of the times, the problem is just that we weren't really able to position the value of our idea, right? And persuasion skills can really help us exactly to achieve that. Then the other very important reasons why we need persuasion skills as business developers is obviously building relationships. Now, if we're able to connect with people on a deeper level, if we're able to influence the way they look at our job, at our offer, at our value proposition, at our ideas, we're also better able to building relationships. Now, note also that persuasion doesn't necessarily mean to manipulate the other, but it's really about understanding what is important for the other person and then using this information as you build the relationship. Obviously, it also helps us to have more successful negotiations for the same principles, right? So when we're talking about persuasion, it always starts from understanding the other person, understanding what's in it for the other person, and then leveraging this information, leveraging the way of communicating of the other person at your advantage so that you can have better negotiations, better outcomes. And then last and most important, it's obviously to drive growth. Now, what we do in business development is constantly to look for new growth opportunities for our company. And if we're not able to persuade people of our ideas, of our proposals, and so on, we're not going to be able to reach this goal. So persuasion, in simple words, is one of the most important communication skills you need to possess as a business development pro if you want to be more successful in this job. Now, what are these persuasion tactics? We're going to see the 5 main principles. The first one is the law of reciprocity. Then we have the law of likeness, the law of scarcity, the IKEA effect, and then the paradox of choice. We're going to analyze each one of them individually. We're going to see what are these laws or principles, in what way they affect the decision-making process of our buyers and our stakeholders, and how we can facilitate this process through persuasion for our stakeholders. So let's start with the first one, the law of reciprocity. Now, as you can see, there are some gift packages before, just behind this sentence, right? The law of reciprocity, that should tell us something. And let's look at the first example. Now, when I started the BD School in 2019, one of the first things we did was to launch our blog, right? So again, our idea was from the beginning to really produce relevant content, relevant information, and practical information that could really help people get to know better about business development, implement these tips, and so on. Now, the only problem was that although I loved writing, and I've always loved writing when I was in school and so on, I never wrote for business purposes. I never had a blog. I didn't really know how to optimize my content for a new medium, which for me was the blog. So what I did, I went online and I started looking for, okay, how to write blog articles, how to write content, what is SEO, and all this kind of stuff, you know, that I had absolutely no clue of. Now, what I found was a lot of resources from this company called HubSpot. Now, for the most tech-savvy of you, you probably know HubSpot is one of the, at this point, I think, one of the most widely used CRM systems, so customer relationship management systems out there. And besides having a very good product in terms of CRM, they also have a lot of free resources specialized on content marketing and marketing in general. Now, I started reading their resources. I read, I think, all their blogs. I took all their free courses around content, SEO, content marketing, and so on. And within a few weeks and months, I was actually able to write for my blog, and I learned really a lot of tactical and strategic information about writing content for our blog. And all this was given to me for free. There was nowhere where I had to put my email address, where I had to download stuff with emails and so on. Most of the things were given to me for free. And not only they given to me for free, all the content, they actually are giving to me also the free CRM, because they actually have a free version of their CRM, which is already amazing. Now, because I got so much value from using HubSpot, of course, when I had to choose which CRM to use for the BD School, the choice was obvious, and it was HubSpot. Why? Because already for many months, I was getting so much value and so much for free out of them that I felt almost as if I would betray them if I would choose another CRM. That's how I became a customer for HubSpot. Now, this little story, this little anecdote is really to say that as people, we really love to, or like, let's say, we feel almost obligated to return favors after people do favors to us. And that's basically what the law of reciprocity tells us, right? So, and you can just think about some very practical and personal cases, right, in your own life where someone did something nice to you, they gave you something, maybe they, I don't know, they remembered your birthday and they organized a little surprise for you. And then after that, every year, now you put their birthday on your calendar, and every year you wish them a happy birthday or something like that, right? Now, this principle is super important and super relevant in influences other people's opinion of our offer, of our service, of our product, because if we are generous enough with our audience, in return, they're gonna feel like not necessarily obligated, but they're gonna feel a lot more compelled to do business with you than with someone else that never gave them anything for free. Now, how can we use this in business development, right? Considering, of course, that you might be individual contributors, so maybe you don't have the, let's say, the influence or the power of changing really big things, right, in the company. But let's say you do have the power to change your own work and to change how you do things. Now, if you want to use this principle, which at the end of the day is a cognitive bias of the human, so it's basically just a bias we have whenever someone is nice to us, we want to be nice in return. Well, one thing we can do to apply this principle in our job and get people to do more of what we want them to do is, first of all, to offer value first. Now, this is a rule of thumb that we teach to all our students. Whenever you're reaching out to people, for whatever reasons, you want their money, you want to sell them something, you want them to become your partners, you want them to give you a job or anything like that, you want a promotion, you always need to offer value first. Why? Because this is going to show, first of all, that you're genuine. So you're not there just to, take something from them, but you also have something to offer to the other person. So immediately you're going to take a higher value in the mind of your stakeholder. Now, what does it mean to offer value first? It can be something really basic as, I don't know, you have a resource on your website, you have a white paper, you have a template, you read a book that really changed your mind about something very specific about your job that you think could benefit your audience. Share it with your audience. When you send your next cold email or a message on LinkedIn, or you write a post on LinkedIn, really start from this perspective first, right? So I want to share something that I think is going to be valuable to you, that is going to add value to your life, and maybe it's going to help you solve a problem and so on. That is also what all of us sort of influencers are doing on LinkedIn. We're always sharing our knowledge, offering a lot of things for free. That does not mean that all the people in your network, they're going to become your customers, your partners, offer you a job and so on. But whenever they will need your service or they will need something from you, they're going to feel a lot more compelled to come to you than to come to someone else. Why? Because they receive a lot of free value from you. So this, you can do it very simply in emails and LinkedIn profiles, even just like if you go to a conference, you're talking to someone, and you say, hey, you know what, like, don't take the coffee from the bar inside the hall. There is one coffee place just outside. The coffee is cheaper and is even better, right? This is also offering value. So think broad about what you can offer to the other person. Even when you think you don't have anything to offer, you most likely do. When you do, and when you offer something to your stakeholders, they're going to reward you with trusting you with their business whenever they need that. Now, the other thing, the other way to leverage the law of reciprocity is by personalizing your approach. Again, so if you do cold outreach, if you meet people at conferences, if you meet people on LinkedIn at networking events and so on, you can only benefit by really personalize your approach and, mentioning something very specific that you learned about the person, right? This also helps you build a connection with the other person. The other person is going to feel like they're more important to you because you even took the time to, I don't know, check their LinkedIn profile and discover that they are volunteers in this specific charity that you really admire, right? This is going to help you, once again, to really build this relationship with the other person and therefore influence their behaviors further down the line. The other super important, it sounds so basic, yet so difficult to realize sometimes, which is really to be genuine and authentic. Why I say it's so difficult? Because from the moment we become business development professionals, founders, and so on, but from the moment we put our professional hat, somehow we think that we need to be just professional, right? So we need to be just the business developer, the founder, and so on. What we are forgetting is that we are people before being the BD Pro, being the founder, and so on. So if you put in your work, in your professional life, more of you, you're going to be more of yourself, more authentic, and this is going to be visible from the other person perspective. You're gonna tend to be more generous to people, both with your knowledge, with the things that you share, with the things that you do for other people, and this is going to be again a very good factor to really help you to build relationship and influence behaviors on the long run. And then last is to follow up with gratitude, right? So let's say, again, the case you're in the conference and someone give you a tip like, hey, there is a restaurant outside, it's much better. I say, well, thank you so much. Like, that was really a great tip. You really saved me at the conference last week. Look, we just released this article. I think it's going to be super helpful for the problem you mentioned to me at the conference. I hope it helps. Something super simple, right? But that really shows that you're just a genuine person, that you like to give, and that you like to give without necessarily expecting anything in return. You will get something in return if you're patient enough. And again, if you act from really a position of being genuine and authenticity. So that is it for the principle of reciprocity, or the law of reciprocity. Let's move on now to the next one, which is the law of likeness. Now, for the law of likeness, I took this example from Dove. I think pretty much the entire world knows what Dove do. They sell all sorts of like beauty care products and hygiene products and so on, self-care. All right, so in 2003, 2004 actually, they launched this campaign, which was called The Real Beauty. Now, the main concept was really to, let's say, help women to feel more confident, regardless of how they look like, because the principle is we're all beautiful in our own way, right? Now, what you can immediately see from this picture is that there is really a huge variety of different women, right? So we have taller, shorter, and so on and so forth, right? Again, underlying the fact that we are all beautiful in our own selves. But this campaign also leveraged one of these important principles in persuasion, which is the principle or the law of likeness. Why? Because the law of likeness tells us that we prefer to say yes to people or to things that we like, right? And as humans, we tend to like people that are similar to us, people that give us compliments, people that work together with us, people that are generally nice and that we recognize as similar to us, right? For whatever reasons, right? So now really going beyond like the way we look, the way we appear, but I don't know, there can be something that we have in common, something that we share in common, right? For example, I'm absolutely passionate about tennis. So whenever someone mentions tennis, I don't care where you're from, what you do, and so on. I'm automatically going to like you because I know that we have this deep passion in common, which I know like and if you like any sports here in this audience, you probably can relate. Whenever you see someone that shares the same passion wherever you are, you immediately feel attracted to the other person and you become best friends, right? Now, Dove, in this commercial, that's exactly the principle that they were leveraging, right? So look, we're all beautiful. We don't have only top models, like we're all beautiful, we're all the same. So if I'm a woman that recognizes themselves in one of the other women, I perceive them as to be more like me. Maybe I'm more inclined to buy Dove products, which I don't, because usually I buy other products, but that's okay. I'm pretty sure there's some people that buy Dove here. All right. So the principle of likeness, right? So people prefer to say yes to those that they like. Now, how can we leverage this principle in business development? Now, the first thing we can do is to find common ground. What does it mean? To find things that you have in common with the other person. So let's say you work in partnerships mostly, and you want to start a partnership with, I don't know, super cool brand that you love, let's say Nike. Okay, great. You're gonna start to look for people that work in the line of business, maybe a partnership manager at Nike that you really want to work with. Now, what you want to do is just to check some information about this person, right? So you will go on the website of the company, you will go on their LinkedIn profile, maybe Instagram, Facebook, and any other social media where you can find them. And then you're gonna start to look for things that you have in common. Now, again, because you really love tennis, just like me, you're going to see that the partnership manager at Nike also really loves tennis. He puts a like on all the things that the ATP shares, and Federer here, Nadal there, and so on and so forth, right? So what's going to happen is that whenever you're going to have a meeting with this person, you're probably going to have something more to share, something to talk about, right? This is the common ground. Now, when you find these things that you have in common, it's going to be a lot easier for the other person to relate to you and to like you, which means if you want to get something out of this person, you're going to be in a much easier, in a much better position to achieve that because you were able to leverage this principle. Give me 1 second, everyone. I'm going to connect with the other headset. All right. Can you hear me? Just give me a thumbs up. Just let me know if you can still hear me. Perfect. Yes, someone raised their hand. Perfect, thank you. All right. Now, second way in which we can apply the law of likeness to business development is mirroring and matching. Now, what does it mean to mirror and match someone? To mirror and match someone means to really observe how the other person behaves, right? So what type of body style do they have? Body language do they use? What type of, I don't know, gestures do they use? Are they closer to you? Are they more distant? And so on and so forth. So really just observing how the other person is behaving, and then matching the energy, let's say, of the other person, right? So basically adapting yourself to the other person. Now, when you do that, you're again showing that you have something in common, or at the very least that you really understand the other person, right? So, for example, for work, I often go to Saudi Arabia. Now, I'm Italian. I tend to be very touchy, very expansive. My, let's say, personal space is very limited in the sense I tend to get touchy with people and so on. I know perfectly well that when I'm in Saudi Arabia, that's not necessarily the same style. So I tend to be a little bit more, let's say, conservative in my gesture. Yes, you can still hear me, right? Perfect, just got a notification. If not, just let me know. Now, of course, I know that whenever I'm there, I have to adapt a little bit my communication style, my body language, and so on. And this helps me to build a better relationship and really just to make the communication easier for the other person, right? And for myself as well, right? So mirroring and matching is really about observing how the other person behaves, what do they do, and then matching their communication style to really create this sense of belonging and of likeness between the two of you. Then you can highlight similarities and shared values. So that's another very easy thing to do to really apply the law of likeness in business development. Again, this nowadays we can do it relatively easily. If we just go on social media and we look at the profile of the person we want to do business with, we can very easily find the things that we have in common. And we can also find what are the shared values that we have in common. So whenever it is that you have to talk to them, you can always use these topics to start a conversation. Now, one thing that we teach to all our students in the cold outreach course, where basically we teach you how to do cold outreach and how to write emails and so on, is always to, when you personalize your outreach, when you personalize emails and so on, we always recommend students to look at things that they're genuinely interested in. So, for example, if I'm looking at a profile of a person that I want to have a partnership with, I'm not going to say, hey, Mark from Nike, right? The famous Mark from Nike, the partnership manager at Nike. Hey, Mark, I see that you're the partnership manager at Nike. Well, I'm the partnership manager at the BD school. Do you want to have a partnership with me? That's a little bit, I don't know, I would say a little bit lazy, right? Because yeah, everybody can see that he's the partnership manager at Nike, right? So why should he do business with me? Why should he have a partnership with me and not with the other 10,000 people that reach out to him with exactly the same message? You don't want to do that, right? So what you want to do instead is you go there, and again, I go on the profile of Mark from Nike, and I'm like, hey, Mark, oh, great. I saw that you were participating in this tennis tournament in Amsterdam. So cool. I actually wanted to go, but I couldn't. How did that go? By the way, I really always love to talk with other tennis passionates, and I also happen to work in partnerships. Would you like to have a chat? And maybe we can find some cool opportunities to work together, right? Now, the message is going to resonate a lot more to this famous Mark from Nike, which I'm not even sure he exists. If he does, or if you know someone at Nike, please introduce them to me. I would love to work with them. But this, of course, is going to help us build a common ground of shared interest and values, which is going to increase the chances that we like each other and therefore we do business together. Again, super simple, because nowadays on internet we can find pretty much every information. We just need to be skilled at using these insights. And then the last one is to basically have shared goals and challenges, right? So whenever you share something like an ambition, a goal, or a challenge, even a pain point with someone else, that also helps you to build a strong relationship. Now, for example, if I am the partnership manager that wants to do the partnership with Nike, now what I want to look for is what is the goal that we have in common. I don't know, both of us want to get more visibility, right? Okay, so I'm going to propose maybe a marketing campaign that can help both of us to have more visibility, right? So given that I know what is the goal and the challenge of the other person, then I can make sure that I leverage it in order to build this feeling of likeness with the other person and increase my chances that this person wants to do business with me and not with someone else. So that is it for the law of likeness. By the way, if you have questions in the meantime, you can write them in the chat box here on Zoom, and then we're going to discuss them later, so you don't forget. All right. Now, this is an example of how I use this principle of likeness in one of my outreach. You can just read the email here. But basically, what I did then was I was looking for networks, for mentorship opportunities, and so on. I just basically wanted to be in touch with other startups. And in my research, I found this website, this network, that basically matches mentors with startups. And all the startups are actually student startups. When I found it, I was genuinely very excited to have found it because, first of all, I really wanted to mentor other startups. I want to learn how to mentor startups better. So I was looking for a network like that. But we really share something very big in common, which is guiding young talent to achieve their goals, right? Now, in the case of founders, is to basically grow their ideas and build their companies. In the case of business developers, is to help them to become better at their job. So we have this very strong thing in common, this value and this vision that we had in common, which made it very easy for the both of us to actually, find a way to collaborate. So what we did eventually, I became a mentor for this platform. And then after that, actually became a lecturer at the University of Amsterdam, because this was actually, it is a program that was born at the University of Amsterdam by a professor of the university. So you see, whenever you genuinely are interested in something and you really see you have shared values, shared visions, and so on, it becomes really a no-brainer for the other person to say, oh, actually, this could be interesting because maybe we do have, we can collaborate on something, right? And again, here, I'm not asking for anything. I'm just saying, look, I would like to know more about you and see what happens. And what happened was a collaboration with the university for a few years and the opportunity of mentoring a lot of startups for me. All right. Now, third principle or law is the law of scarcity. Probably you've heard of it, but I decided to put it here because I was having a conversation with one of our students and she was like, oh, but what if I include this in my approach? Do you think it's going to work? I think, yes, it's gonna work. And I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about this. Now, I don't know if any one of you knows what this picture is about, but this plane in the background was called the Concorde plane. I'm very fascinated about this plane. I love traveling, and this plane was basically top notch, the super most technological plane ever invented. It could bring you from London and Paris to New York in just 3 hours and a half. Super fast. It was one of the supersonic commercial planes, the first invented actually. Now, this plane, amazing, right? So it was mostly used by royals, as you can see, and by VIPs. As you can imagine, it wasn't the cheapest plane to take. So it wasn't the Ryanair back then. So it was the Concorde, right? It was really for the elites. Now, there was one problem with this plane, is that obviously, because the market was so small, right? So there were only really small number of people that could actually take this plane. It also meant for, unfortunately, British Airways and Air France that eventually it became very costly to maintain these planes, right? Because even if they were the richest people in the world to take it, well, it's not that they would take it every day in the first place. And at some point, it became really economically not feasible. It was also combined with a few accidents that happened here and there that maybe also contributed to the fact that people weren't really keen on taking this plane. But long story short, what happened is that in 2003, they decided to just dismiss it. So they did the last flight and so on. The funny thing is, as soon as they announced that they would stop the Concorde, they actually had an increase in demand for flights with the Concorde immediately after the announcement. So suddenly the entire world wanted to take the Concorde. Why that happened? Because it was announced that the Concorde was no longer going to be available from that day onwards, which meant the Concorde became extremely scarce, like so scarce that it was not going to exist anymore. Now, what happens when something is so scarce and so rare? We want it more. So the more something is scarce or difficult to obtain, the more valuable it becomes for us. It's just human nature. We want what we cannot have, apparently, right? So the scarcity law tells us exactly that, right? So the more something is difficult to obtain, the more valuable it becomes to us. Now, how can we use this principle and leverage this principle in business development? Now, first thing we can do, and that's super basic in any commercial strategy, I would say, have limited time offers, right? So whenever you're reaching out to someone, so let's say you do cold outreach and your type of business development is most like sales oriented, right? So your responsibility is mostly to find new customers. Well, what you can do whenever you're reaching out, you can say, look, we have this new product, this new service, and so on. We're going to sell it at this amount, but only until the end of the month. So if you come after, well, it's going to increase the price. Right? Super simple. This is going to make your the pricing and the offer very scarce, is very limited in time. And on top of that, is also going to create this sense of urgency for the person. Now, the person doesn't want to have the fear of missing out. So most likely they're going to say, yeah, okay, great, let's do it, right? They're not going to think too much because the fear of losing this amazing deal that you're proposing them is going to be so big that, well, you don't want to lose anything. This happened to me a few months ago, actually, and I'm not sure how I feel about that right now. But a few months ago, I was at a conference, and on the first day of the conference, their salespeople came to me. It's like, yeah, you have some time, to talk about next year and so on. I was like, well, look, I want to see how it goes. It's only the first day, it's the first year here, so let's see. So I said, okay, great, we're going to come tomorrow. So the day after they came. Now, what happened is that on the first day, it went really great. I had a speaking session that helped us to get a lot of leads. I had very nice conversations with people and so on. So I was quite excited, right? So I'm like, oh, that is going well, right? So they came back to the stand. I was like, oh, do you have time now for a call? I was like, yeah, sure. Let's go to, we had a glass of a drink and we started talking. And it's like, yeah, this for next year, we're already selling, blah, blah, blah. However, keep in mind that in 1 month, we're going to increase the price. So if you want to lock the price, you better sign today. Now, because I was so excited about what was going on at the conference and we got a lot of opportunities, I said, well, you know what? Let's do it. Let's just sign and so on. Don't sign under these cases. Like, don't do that. I don't regret it too much yet, because I still think it was a good opportunity, and it was just the first time for us, so it was great to learn. But ideally, I wanted to have closed some deals before signing, right? So eventually everything went well and okay, but I first wanted to have the return on investment on the first one, right? So I got, let's say, I fell from the for the law of scarcity, and because it was used so well. So you can use similar tactics as well, but again, make sure that the person then is not going to regret that. Then giving exclusive access, right? So this also helps you to leverage the scarcity effect. Why? Because if something is so exclusive, it's going to be available only to a small group of people, which is going to mean people are going to love it even more, because not everybody has it. I'm the only one that has it, right? Now, if you remember a few years ago, I think it was 2020, 2021, an app started to be really, really famous, which was called Clubhouse. Now, the Clubhouse app was basically this eavesdropping app where you could listen to conversation. You would just tune in and listen to conversations. Now, in order to get access to this platform, you had to be invited by someone, and not everybody could be invited, right? So this really helped them. They really leveraged the scarcity effect very, very well, because everybody was talking about it. There was Elon Musk doing chats on this app, but even if you wanted, you couldn't be on it unless you had an invite. So giving exclusive access really creates this feeling of, oh, I want it, like, why I can't have it, right? I want it, right? So people are going to feel even more, like, let's say, excited to try and to buy from you, to do a partnership with you, and so on and so forth. Then the other thing you can do is just to limit the quantity of your product or service. Now, one thing we do, for example, is on these webinars, we only have a maximum of 100 attendees. Why? Because we want to make sure that in the Q&A session, especially, we really have the time to get through the questions, to give you personal feedback and so on. We wouldn't be able to do that if there are too many attendees, right? So we prefer to keep it small. That means, though, that if you want to join and you're above the 100, unfortunately, you can't. Now, sometimes we post the recordings on YouTube, so that's okay. You don't miss out too much, but we don't post all of them on YouTube. So if you miss something, well, it's lost, unless you're a student, and then you still get access to it. Then the other thing could be early bird discounts. Same, right? So you just put a limited amount of tickets available, a limited offer for early birds, and so on. This is going to incentivize people to actually do business with you on time, because they don't want to lose the discount, right? Now, this is if you go on Eventbrite, Ticketmaster, and so on and so forth, for whatever concert you want to go, whatever event you want to go, conference, and so on, you're always going to find the early bird discounts. Now, this really helps you, again, to create urgency and then to achieve your goals faster. All right, let's move on now to the next one, which is the IKEA effect. Now, last year I decided to get a subscription on HelloFresh. For those of you who don't know it, HelloFresh is basically a food box subscription model, let's say, and every week you receive 1 to 3 boxes of food that you can then cook at home and prepare at home. Now, there are a lot of benefits of using HelloFresh. At least I found it very beneficial while I was using it last year, which was the fact that I don't have to go for groceries. I have mostly healthy food, and I can cook myself with the recipes that they provide me. Now, they use very well this IKEA effect. And the IKEA effect, basically, what it tells us is that people tend to put more value on things that they help to build or create. And that is true, that every time I was cooking my meals with HelloFresh, first of all, I was taking more time. I was really taking time to read the recipe and to really cut all the ingredients super meticulously and with a lot of love and so on. But somehow that food tasted better than the regular pasta I make on a day that I'm a little bit lazy, right? Why? because there was some effort that I had to put into it, right? Which was reading the recipe and cutting everything, put all the ingredients in the right amounts and so on and so forth. And then once I was done, I felt like, oh, wow, this tastes so good. Probably tastes exactly the same as all the other times I cooked in my life, in these 35 years of life, but it really felt different. It did feel more tasty. So this is basically the IKEA effect in practice. Now, how can you use that in your business development role? Well, first of all, try to create co-creation opportunities with your customers, with your partners, and so on, right? So go to them, ask them for feedback and say, hey, what do you think? I have this idea for this new service or product. What do you think? And just gather feedback and then use their feedback to build something together. Now, this at the BD School, we do it from the very beginning. So even the blog, like all the content we have, all the courses we have and so on, they were really created with our students. I actually remember the first student, she's called Quirin. And when we did the first training with her, so basically every week I was creating the slides for that week's training. So it was 5 weeks. And then every time at the beginning of the session and at the end of the session, I would ask her for feedback on the session, on the previous session, and I would ask her for input or things that she wanted to have in the next session. Now, this really helped us create a very strong content that was really helpful because it really came from the people that we were training. So this you can do it very simply in all the conversation you have with your stakeholders. You can even do surveys. If you have a lot of customers, a lot of partners, a lot of stakeholders, you can use a survey. It's going to be easy. If you don't have any of that because you're just starting, you can use social media, right? You can create a poll on LinkedIn and just ask for people's opinion. But then remember, it's super important that the feedback and the input you get, you actually use it to create something helpful for the people you want to help. The other thing is to build communities. Now, when you build communities, the beauty of it is that everybody can contribute, right? And even with a very simple comment or with a very simple idea, feedback, or a post that they share and so on, they're actually really contributing to making your community a better place. And it's going to contribute to making your business a better business as well. Why? Because you're going to, again, use all the input that comes from the community. And on top of that, the community can help you to promote it, to give you visibility, and so on and so on and so forth. Why? Because they feel part of it. They are part of that community. They are part of the movement that you're creating. And therefore, they feel a lot more compelled to help you because they are part of that. So in a way, they're not only helping you, they're helping themselves because they committed, they spend some of their time and energy to help you. So they're going to feel a lot more compelled to know, to promote you, to do business with you, to refer you, and so on. Then the other way you can apply the IKEA effect in business development is to create customization options. Now, whenever you can, so if you have services especially, but even with products at the end of the day, try to see if there are some things that you can propose as modules, right? Something basically that can help people customize their option. One simple thing, for example, could be to create different packages of your offer, right? So that could be one way of doing it, or to create modular services, modular products, and so on and so forth. Now, in our case, for example, our entire business is personalized learning opportunities, learning journeys, and especially when we work with B2B. So if we're creating a training for a company, everything from the content to the duration to the format is all customizable, right? So it's basically the customer that is creating their own training based on their goals, needs, ambitions. And of course, we support them and guide them through the process so that once we have we agree on what type of training is the right one for them, then we can deliver it and then start having an impact on their team. But this really works because they put effort into building this thing together with you. So then you can get them, you can convince them much easier if they have to commit to something, right? So they're going to feel a lot more compelled to working with you. And then What else you can do is to provide resources, DIY resources and toolkits. Now, if you go on our blog, for example, you're going to find a lot of templates that you can use. Now, many of these templates, we use them also in our training. In the training, of course, you have a trainer that is helping you to, that guides you, that brainstorms with you and so on. But if you want, you can just download the very same templates, you follow the blogs, you follow the videos, and maybe you manage to achieve your goals anyway, right? Maybe you prefer to do it that way because you don't like to have a class, you don't like to have a training, you don't like to pay for training, and then you do it for free. That's okay. But this is really going to help you, again, to build this trust with your audience, because they're like, oh, okay, well, I can also do it myself, right? So that's great that this company is helping me achieving my goals. One day, if I want to do a training, if I need this service, this product, I'm most likely going to go to them because they already helped me, right, to do things as I wanted to do them. So these are simple steps that you can take already tomorrow, but they can really help you to get more results in your job. Now, last one is the paradox of choice. Now, one thing I love to do every time I'm somewhere, new countries and so on, I really love to go to supermarkets. And a couple of weeks ago, I was in France, so I went to the supermarket, and I really love yogurts, all sorts of yogurts. So I went to the supermarket, and there was this huge fridge full of I don't know how many types of yogurts. And for me, it was a bit of a shocker because here in the Netherlands, if there's some Dutch here, maybe they can confirm, we don't have this much options. Like we have maybe 3 types of yogurt, so you have to choose one of them, at least in the supermarket near my house. Then maybe the bigger ones, I don't know. But generally, you have very limited options in terms of yogurt. So you either like those ones or not. So imagine I go to France and there were so many different yogurts, right? And I didn't know what to choose because they all looked great and there were all these flavors that I don't have in the Netherlands where I live most of my time and so on. So I decided to go crazy and I tried a yogurt that was, I think, with pistachio or something like that. So I was like, oh, well, I love pistachio, so I think it's going to be great. Let's try it. Now, I went home, I had this yogurt, and it was not really up to my expectations. Let's say it wasn't the best yogurt I've ever had. Okay, fair enough. So what happened there? What happened there is that I simply had too many choices. And because I had too many choices, first of all, I didn't know what to choose. Then I chose something based on criteria that usually I wouldn't take into account. And I was disappointed with what I chose, right? So I was like, oh, I should have stick to my regular one, with coffee. That's it. That I should have got that one. Now, this happened because of the paradox of choice. Now, the paradox of choice is another cognitive bias that basically tells us that if we give people too many options, people are going to take too much effort in order to take a decision. And even when they take a decision, they're not going to be satisfied with their choice. Why? Because you could have had something better and you know it because you've seen them all there. You've seen all the yogurts you wanted and you chose the wrong one, right? So this, again, is a cognitive bias that we need to take into account because it can really, if we give too many choices to our audience, it's just going to slow down the process for them to take a decision. And anyway, they're not going to be happy. So even if you manage to get them as customers or partners, they're not going to be happy with you. So probably they're not going to renew or they're not going to keep working with you later on. So how can we avoid the paradox of choice in BD? What are some simple actions that we can take to avoid that and really help our customers, help our partners to take a decision that they're confident about and that can really help them to achieve their goals? Now, the first thing is to always, and this is a rule that you should, if you forget anything else about this webinar, I really want you to remember this. Whenever you're talking to people, regardless of who they are, be it partners, customers, and so on, always focus on one value proposition at the time. It doesn't matter how many things you can do for them. It doesn't matter how many products, services, or features you have. Do not talk about all of them. Only focus on one and only value proposition that is the value proposition that is relevant to them, right? So if you know that your customer has problem X that you can solve with feature Y of your product, only talk about that feature why that solves a problem, and that's it, right? Obviously, if they become your customers, they're going to get all the benefits of using your entire product and services, right? But when they're taking the decision, so if you want to close a deal, if you want to have a meeting, if you want to close a partnership, it's really no use to tell people like all the amazing things you can do. You're just going to confuse them. So you have to focus on one value proposition at a time. Now, this is a mistake I used to make a lot when I started the BD school, because I was just so excited. And every time I would have a sales call, I would tell them like all the possible things about the BD schools. Like, hey, you can do coaching, or we can do this, and we can do that, and blah, 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 blah. And I would see people that be like, I don't even know what I want anymore, so I will let you know. And of course, they would ghost me and never let me know. Now, what I learned was really that my mistake was this one. I was talking too much about too many things. So only focus on one value proposition at the time. The other thing is offer decision support tools. For example, comparison charts, right? So if you have a comparison chart that helps your customers really see how you're different from your competitors, or to your partners, why you're a better partner than your competitors, do that. That's going to help them to take a decision faster. The same with case studies, right? So if you have a case study that can really help the customer imagine themselves working with you, provide them with a case study. If you have social proof on your website, put social proof on your website, right? Because that's going to help people take a decision much faster. Then the other thing is to highlight recommended solutions, right? Now, whatever business you're working on, whatever company you're working on, and so on, of course, I trust that you know your customers very well. So you know exactly how you can help them, right? How you can help your customers, your partners to really achieve their goals, which means you also know what would be more or less the best solution that fits most of the times, right? Again, we know that every customer, every partner is different, but if you have that, or if you have a bestseller service, bestseller product, solution, and so on, make sure that you highlight it as a recommended solution, because again, this can help the person take a decision faster, and is not going to be too confused with all the many options that they have available, right? Because remember, now we're talking about all the choices that you offer, but there are other millions of offers that all your competitors and non-competitors are proposing to people, right, to solve their problems. So you really need to make it easy for people to choose to work with you. And the way you can do that is by highlighting recommended solutions. And then last, which is, I hinted a little bit about that on that before, which is to package bundled solution. Now, what does it mean? If you have, let's say, 5 or 6 different products or services, it might be too much, right? So what you can do is, or actually service 1, service 2, they go well together. So I make a package with that. Service 3 and 4, they go well together. I make another package. And 5 and 6, they go well together. I make another package. So then you go from 6 to 3 options. 3, by the way, is the magic number. It's always, that's why you always see 3 plans in every company, in every software that exists. There are always 3 plans. Why? Because you still give options to people, so people can still choose the option that fits their needs the best, but it's not overwhelming. It's not too much, right? So you just put together things, services, products that go well together, you bundle them together, and you help your customers and partners to facilitate the decision of working with you. Now, this is the last tip, let's say, which is a reading tip. Now, some of the insights that you learned in this webinar, they're actually from this book called Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. And this book is really all about principles, cognitive biases, and principles and laws that really dictate how people take decisions. And it gives you tips basically on how to leverage it in your job, right? So this is mostly used by marketers, so really by marketing people. But again, these principles are really just about human principles. So by all means, go ahead, read it, and then really try to apply all these learnings in your job. And my last, so before we go to the Q&A session for a few minutes, I would like to leave you with the homework, which is write down one thing that you learned in this webinar, one practical thing that you learned in this webinar, and commit to try it for the next 2 to 3 weeks. And then basically just see with yourself, like keep track of yourself of whether and how it has impacted your interactions with your customers and partners, and really just see like how very simple adjustments can really help you to connect better with your customers. So just one thing, if you want, you can also share in the chat what is this one thing that you will apply in your job. So I'm always curious to know how you're going to use this information, and make sure that you try it in your job. Now, before we go to the Q&A session, as mentioned, we do provide a lot of content, courses, and one-on-one coaching. So we just launched actually some new courses on cold outreach, soft skills, and so on. So go check the courses page, see if there is something interesting for you. If you have feedback on them, also please share them with me, so we make sure that we can always improve. And that is also the last thing. So we can go on the Q&A session. I will stop the screen share so we can all talk. I will also